Hello and welcome to another episode 16, I believe, of TELEMEDIA in 10 vodcast. Welcome. As you may notice, I am not joined this week by my esteemed colleague, Mr. Jarvis Todd. He is off at an affiliate marketing show in Mexico. So I'm assuming he's not captured by the cartels and makes it back in one piece. We'll be catching up with him in the next episode in a couple of weeks' time. So prepare yourselves for everything you need to know about where the affiliate marketing industry is at the moment. And I'm Paul Skeldon. I'm the editor of all things TELEMEDIA that we publish here. And I'm going to fly solo this time. So let's see how this goes as a one-man band. So to coin Jarvis's phrase, without further ado, I'm going to leap straight in. Kind of interesting things out this week about the internet. According to a survey, a study by Hootsuite, which is a sort of social media management platform and a social marketing agency called We Are Social. Every year they do a digital sort of snapshot report about the world of digital and how people are using the internet. But they've concluded that there are 5 billion people now online globally, up 200 million in a year. And that's equates to 63% of the world's population is on the internet. If you just sort of think about that for a minute, all right, there's still 37% who aren't, but 63% of everybody in the whole world are on the internet, which I think is astounding, really, and just marks out why what we do in the world of telemedia is increasingly so important. Now, obviously, Hootsuite being a social media management company, are much more focused on the use of social. But the report does throw up some interesting things, really, about how people use the internet, but also how they use social media. Now, there's 4.65 billion social media users in the world. So that's almost all of the people that are online are using social media, which is extraordinary. That is pretty much everyone. And that's gone up 30 million since last year. So it's still massive and growing, but it's starting to be a bit more tribal about how people use it. So Facebook is being used increasingly by people who want to communicate, particularly with family and friends, whereas TikTok is there really for people to entertain themselves. Instagram is people creating their own content, that sort of thing, and as is Snapchat. They're starting to be used in different ways by different people for different things. Now, at this point, Jarvis would say, well, what about business? How does this impact business? What's sort of in it for the business world? Well, the business world uses social media also, and surprisingly, in slightly different ways to how ordinary people use it. So Facebook is still by far and away the most popular sort of social channel on the internet for business users and decision makers, as the report dubs them, with 61% of them most likely to use Facebook, but 53% use Instagram, and 48.9% using WhatsApp, and 36.9% using LinkedIn when looking at other businesses to do business with. So while for us, actually, LinkedIn works extremely well, Facebook and Instagram are where key decision makers are going, particularly when they're looking to try and do business with other people. Now, there are other upshots from this sort of vast amount of people using the internet. E-commerce obviously has gone up hugely. 57% of the people quizzed by this study say that they've done some form of online shopping in the last month. So, if you think about the fact there's 5 billion people on the internet, if 57% of them are doing e-commerce, that's an awful lot of shopping, and a lot of money to be made out of everything around e-commerce. Particularly interestingly, interaction and communication through social media and through other online channels. Email, for instance, sort of held up particularly well in the sort of business side of things. It's still a very robust business communications tool, despite how everything else has sort of changed. But things like how-to videos and educational content are proving increasingly exciting and interesting to people around the world. So I think a message that comes out of this that Hootsuite particularly trying to push is not only that social media is extremely important, but also that that using the internet to educate, so marketing around things that are how-tos and understanding and learning something new is becoming increasingly popular with people, the end user people. So something there to mull over. Which brings us really to our sort of second story, which I think is very much related, actually. A separate study done by a company called GWI, which sort of it's a software as a service platform, but they have interviewed, they say 700,000 internet users aged between 16 and 64. Now that's a phenomenal number of interviews. That's even more than I've done in my extensive and lengthy career as a journalist. But assuming that's right, they've reached some, I think, even more interesting conclusions about all these people that use the internet and how they do it. And that seemingly us old guys, well, and girls, are becoming sort of a much more potent force in internet use, particularly around, you'd be surprised, gaming. Now, the report does focus a lot on streaming of entertainment services, music, and particularly TV. But it does also touch on gaming. And it's found that in the last quarter of 2019, so pre-pandemic, 56% of the baby boomer generation, so that's what people in the sort of top end of this range, so people in their sort of late 50s, early 60s, say they play games via any device, a number which has now hit 65% here in 2021 when they looked at the data. So that's not particularly comparable with the large number of Gen Zs playing games online and on mobile, but it's quite a significant number. Similarly, they're consuming a vast amount of streamed video content, while overall the sort of interest in streaming and online TV services has waned a little. I guess, like, if you've read any of the news in the newspapers, not only has Netflix put up its prices, but it's been forced to do so because it's actually losing subscribers. This seems to have, possibly we've reached peak online TV streaming, but we are still seeing quite a lot of people doing it, particularly again in the older segment. So what does this mean, though? This is what Jarvis would be asking. He would be scratching his not so grey beard and asking, what does it mean that all these old guys like me are now gaming and doing all these other things? Well, what it means is, again, as we talked about in the previous story, marketers in particular, and that kind of includes everybody who we deal with here, because we're all sort of trying to market something, aren't we? Needs to look more at how to polish their sort of experiences for use, but also focus them perhaps maybe not just at young people. Now, this is obviously quite challenging for a business to do, because you got to try and tickle different audiences in different ways. But what's tended to happen, particularly with digital stuff, is it's been aimed primarily at much younger people. Whereas there's a growing number, particularly post-pandemic, where people were forced to shift how they did stuff to using these things. And, like everybody, we all love being digital. I mean, I'm a poor example because I've been very much digital first for many, many years because of the job I do. But I think for many other people, this is sort of their first real taste of it, and they are really getting into it. So it's something that's worth bearing in mind, I think, for the companies across the telemedia space, that we're not just trying to sell stuff to kids. It is all about engaging and monetizing stuff that might appeal to segments you may traditionally have possibly not so much overlooked, but maybe considered to be too small and too unengaged to tap into. So I think this is something that we might see more of across the year. We're going off to the Rocco Genesis event in next month, and that there is looking at how to sort of open up the world of communications sort of to its kind of next level. And I'm hoping there'll be a lot of discussion there about these new demographics and how to actually tap into them and how to make this work. So that's something we should report back on next month once we've been and done all that sort of thing. But I think for now, there's some sort of key takeaways there that we need to look at how to target stuff at different people. And I think that's going to be particularly interesting around content. because, as I say, it's traditionally been aimed at much younger people. So a couple of good, interesting things there to mull over around the world of the internet. Our final story I'm going to look at today on my own is about digital wallets. Now, payments is obviously a sort of key part of the telemedia world, and wallets have increasingly become something we've looked at and tried to sort of pick apart really, and how they fit into the sort of broader picture of how you use telemedia services, how value-added services are paid for, and particularly maybe where things like carrier billing fall into. But wallets have taken off again post-pandemic or during the pandemic for people doing contactless digital payments. You know, increasingly people are using their phones and their smartwatches to pay for things. I've noticed it myself considerably, just even in sort of out of the way little shops in the middle of nowhere where I live. There was a fellow of advancing age, I'd say he was even older than me, in front of me, and he paid using his watch. Didn't give it any thought, he'd clearly done it many times before. And that's just, how he did it. Like, you see it everywhere. You just have to look around in all the shops. People are now paying with their phones, and this growth in wallets is staggering, in fact. And some research out today, in fact, from Juniper Research, predicts that the value of digital wallet transactions is going to surpass $12 trillion by 2026, which, that's years away. Who knows? Anything could happen. But currently, the current estimate is there'll be $7.5 trillion worth of digital wallet transactions in 2022. That's astounding. I mean, for all those 5 billion people using the internet, all us old people doing it, that's a lot of money flapping about through digital wallets. And obviously they're convenient and easy, but I think it is now we're at that point where we're seeing a real shift in how payments are done. It's almost that sort of cash. Who uses cash anymore? And of course, in the digital world, it's very difficult to do. But even now, sort of people using contactless cards is starting to wane. It is all about contactless wallet-based devices, and I think we're going to see more of that growth. I think personally we're going to see even that evaporate into sort of payments being even more seamless. Possibly just a sort of watch thing is possibly even easier than Face ID or fingerprint ID on your phone to pay for things. But I think payments are going to be sort of embedded into the sort of shopping process, particularly for online things. I think in actual stores you're going to still need to contactlessly tap something, but it will be just a device. I think also we're going to see all these payment solutions start to branch out into much more interesting ways to pay, particularly buy now, pay later, which is already massive in retail, certainly in the UK. I mean, it's really exploded through companies like Klarna. But I think we're also going to start to see, thanks to wallets, the increased use of cryptocurrencies to buy things, because it's just so much easier then to manage your cryptocurrency and your payment experience if you're using a digital wallet. And so I think that's going to be some interesting stuff there to look out for on the payment front. Within the report from Juniper, just sort of as a little rundown, they do a leaderboard of the top 5 wallets globally. PayPal, perhaps unsurprisingly, is top. But Alipay, WeChat Pay, 2 massive things in China, are at 2nd and 3rd. Whether we start to see those being used domestically in Europe and elsewhere remains to be seen. Certainly Chinese tourists, business people use them extensively. There's a lot of places here in the UK will actually accept Alipay and WeChat Pay payments now, particularly in big cities. Apple Pay and Google Pay come in at 4th and 5th. But I think we are going to see those places sort of change and develop. So some interesting stuff there in the world of payments, which of course is something will be covered at the World Telemedia Show, which is happening on the 19th to 21st of October in Marbella. Just an FYI at this point, several months out, the website is now live, so you can check out the beginnings of who will be there, who will be speaking, what the format of the show is going to be like. Have a look at the wonderful venue. If you do book your place, which I strongly advise that you do, particularly if you do it before the end of July, you'll get an early bird rate. I don't get involved in the filthy side of money, etc. So I'm not sure what the discount is, but it's usually pretty heavy and well worth doing. So that's something to look out for. In other news as well, I think over on our Telemedia 8.1 live website, Nick Lane and Andy Jones of Mobile Squared have recorded new versions of the presentations they gave at the Telemedia 8.1 live event we did in Barcelona back in the end of February, with some new data and some new information in there. I watched it earlier on. It's absolutely superb. Really engaging, some fantastic statistics in there about how messaging could become $1 trillion industry. But really, what's interesting therein is how people are using messaging currently, how consumers are using it, and what they want from it, and where that's going. Which for people in our industry is essential viewing. There's a lot more about messaging, particularly this idea of can it become $1 trillion industry by 2030, which will be out in the next issue of Telemedia magazine, which we're just putting the finishing touches to at the moment. So that'll be out in a couple of weeks' time. Plenty more in there also about value-added services, billing and payments, CPaaS, all sorts of things. So look out for that. And any of you that are going to the Rocco Genesis event in a couple of weeks' time, we'll see you out there also. And other than that, I look forward to welcoming a suntanned and sombreroed Jarvis Todd back in a couple of weeks' time. But for now, that brings us neatly to 20 minutes of lovely Telemedia news for this week. It's been a pleasure, if albeit a lonely one, and I look forward to seeing you all again in a couple of weeks. Thank you and goodbye.